All right, good evening. Great crowd. I'm Robert Mounts, the board president of the Matheson History Museum. We're delighted to have you all here, such a large crowd on relatively short notice for this event. Three of my good friends, lovely ladies who have been advocates in the community for a long time. And of course, you know that the Matheson, we are all about interpreting local history and preserving local history. And we're sitting right here across the street from the subject matter today, the Thelma Boltin Center, which is also on the path, as we are, of the Sweetwater Greenway, which hopefully one day will come to pass. If you've thought about it, at this intersection in front of Northeast Boulevard, that's actually, I've learned recently, is a legal crosswalk. I don't know how many of you have tried to cross it when people are coming real fast down both sides, but we've been pushing for over a year, not only to develop the Sweetwater Greenway bike path and walkway, but a lighted, danger warning crosswalk right there at this point. And another reason is that across the street is the Matheson Library and Archives building in the old melting pot, which our staff crosses from time to time. And nobody goes all the way up there to the light either way, so we hope to have more and more outdoor programming in the coming months, especially when it gets cooler. We've really cleaned up our grounds a lot. If you've had a chance to look around, the Sarah Matheson house back there is still open by appointment only. But last couple 3-4 months ago, when they had the Sweetwater Greenway Loop festival, we were part of that. We had a band on the porch. We had a bouncy bar thing, a thing out there for the kids, and it can be a great space for the community. It's also right down Second Avenue from the Streetery. And ultimately, the city is talking about more signage, making this more of the city's park, connecting to Depot Park and all of that. So we look forward to you helping with all of that. And also, I want to say very proudly that our board at the Matheson believes in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're one of the things I'm most proud about the Matheson is that we're willing to undertake difficult history and difficult programs. And, starting recently in my time with the Johns Committee exhibit, the We're Tired of Asking exhibit about the students revolting against CF President Stephen C. O'Connell, the language exhibit, We Are Here, which is in the next room. And while you're here, I encourage you to take a look at that. But we have this wonderful Great Southern Music Hall exhibit right here now for at least until next March, funded by Jeffrey Meldon, who's a major exhibit sponsor, with John Moran's photographs. And originally, I can tell you, we thought it was going to be about 20 black and white frame photographs, scattered around the room with little blurbs about it. But a guy named Rick Kilby turned it into a whole full wall display with a narrative. And if you brought your smartphone and you see a QR code, you can even bring up samples of their music. Quite a heritage for Gainesville. We're very proud of the room. We're going to keep it up as long as we can. Following that, though, next year, there is going to be a democracy exhibit. It is, after all, an election year. And I want to also remind you that the Matheson is a nonprofit, private. It depends entirely on memberships, on donations, on grants. We're not part of the city, not part of the county, not part of the state, although we ask the state for grant money from time to time. But I encourage all of you, if you're not a member of the museum, see Willett back there at the table before you leave. Sign up and become a member. Get our dispatchers and information about future programs, support the museum, because this really is a community resource that's almost irreplaceable. And next year, we're going to be entering our 30th anniversary celebration with several events commemorating it, honoring our donors like Dr. Barr and Dr. Barrow. and so forth. And speaking of our sponsors, I'm obligated and pleased to also say that this program is sponsored in part by Visit Gainesville, Alachua County, the Department of State, Division of Arts and Culture, the Florida Council on Arts and Culture, and the state of Florida. And I'm thrilled to open up with my friend Melanie Barr, who will tell us about the history of the Thelma Boltin.
Well, it's great to see everybody. You came out on this sort of rainy day. So what we're going to do, we're going to have three parts to this. I'm going to give a lecture and tell you the history because a lot of people don't know anything. And a lot of people don't even remember Thelma Boltin because she died in 1992. Who can remember Thelma Boltin? Okay, a lot of people, good. And but the new people don't know her, so they would wonder, why is this building named for her? Who was she? She never married or had children, so there's no one around to tell her story. The soldiers came here in World War II to rest and relax. And if you had a relative stationed in Florida, it's very likely they came here. Who had a relative stationed in Florida? Anybody? Good, Richard? Yeah. And so my father was in California. We were from Chicago, and that's where he went to get his training. And if wherever your father or grandfather, uncle, whoever it was, did their training, they went to a center like this, possibly. But we know they hitchhiked here from all across the state. So we know that your relative likely did come to the Thelma Boltin. And I am looking forward to hopefully it becoming saved, of course. And then I have a lot of artifacts that I can donate to a little museum. Thelma Boltin's diaries from 1928 and 1932, an album from 1970, 52-year-old album of the songs at the Florida Folk Festival, and various other things. Another question I do want to know, since the building was primarily a military building in the beginning for soldiers, who had a relative, raise your hand, father, grandfather, uncle in World War II? Okay, great. So a lot of the younger people did not, and they're losing touch with the way the world changed. It was worse than COVID because, for example, my grandma, all her sons went off to war, my father and my two uncles. And we forget about that. And we forget about World War II and the big impacts it had. So I haven't even looked at this picture for 30 years. And when I got it out, it was all sentimental. Because, yeah, it's my poor grandma had her sons off in the war. So one of my problems is I have all this paperwork and my little presentation introduction is on my computer at home. So I'm not good with computers. So I never thought, oh, print this out before you leave. Never happened. So I may be kind of rambling because suddenly I'll think of something that I wanted to say. But we are trying to save it. That's what we're hoping. And we have a little committee now, Paula Stamer and Betsy Hurst. And we hope that we're going to pass around sign up sheets. And all you have to do is just sign up with your email. So we can tell you when there's new information. That's all it is. It's not a 501c nonprofit and all that. But in the future, if we do exist, just like the Thomas Center Associates helps the Thomas Center and the Evergreen Cemetery Association helps the Evergreen, both city owned, we would probably want donations in the future. Just pledges now, but no donations. But we want the citizens to say, we own this building. It's the citizens' building. The citizens own it. The city commissioners do not own it. So who are they to tear it down, right? That's what I think. Oops, sorry. Are the Zoom people hearing me? Okay, good. You're not hearing me? Okay, I got to stand a certain distance. Okay, so I want to introduce Betsy Hurst, and I don't want her to talk too long, so start doing this if she talks too long. You can talk right now, and then Paula, and then we'll go into the lecture. No, you're going to talk now. And then after the lecture's over, then we're going to have people come up and give their reminiscences or things they want to say, or just add to the record, or things they remembered about Thelma Boltin, or the teen time, or the bands.
Okay. All right. Hello, my name is Betsy Maloney Hurst, and I just arrived a few minutes in advance from about a 1,500-mile drive to make sure this was a high priority, even though we stopped to see some historic things. But Montgomery had to get a very quick view since we were in a hurry to arrive for this meeting. And I have my photos, a few select ones from our concert in 2019 at the Thelma Boltin Recreation Center with our community orchestra on ensemble and the Caring and Sharing and the Star Theater performers. We had the the room completely filled, and we were supposed to perform a year later on March 14th, 2020, and you all probably know what happened on March 12th and 13th when our whole world came crashing. And my pictures show, even through the door, that it looks very good still. You'll be very surprised when you look at the current pictures of it. I was born here, the old Alachua General Hospital. That's no more now. And I grew up with parents who were strong advocates. My mother mainly in historic preservation. They tried to save the old courthouse, but they successfully saved the Thomas Center. I think that was a women's club project, I think, and they got involved with the Thomas Center Associates, and you can see it. The wrecking ball had already been ordered. It was already supposed to be demolished, and as you know, it barely got saved. Each of those buildings, the reason I mention them, the courthouse and the Thomas Center, is because they were approximately the same age or younger than the Thelma Boltin building is right now. This is critical. We had to perform an ensemble at the Howard Bishop Cafetorium, and it was nothing like the beautiful recreation center. We called it the Rec Center. We grew up. I had ballet lessons there, recitals. We had teen time. Cotillion. We had quite a few of our performances. I remember the bar on the side where we did our dance lessons. Anyway, we had all those great experiences. The swearing in of the city commissioners later on. And later, I didn't realize, but I have, when we do do sharing later or whatever, we're doing memories, I have a few of my photographs that actually show how beautiful the building still is at this time. It can be saved, but it's going to take people like you all who came out today and all the people you know who care to write to the city commissioners to convince them. I have all my question and answers from Betsy Waite, who's part of the Wild Spaces and Public Places. We have all the information, so we'll be glad to share it. And we have a fact sheet that we have to hand out so you will know what action you can take. So what now? You want me to address what happened? He wants to make sure you understand about the actions. That is very important.
Good afternoon. I'm Paula Stamer. I'm not going to speak long. I have a bad cold. But Melanie is the true repository of all the crucial information about this center. But I do want to say a few things about the uphill climb we have in protecting the center, because the City Commission has voted to, they claim, a partial restoration, but in our estimation, it's going to be utter destruction of the building. It's important to understand that in the process of making governmental regulatory decisions, utterly absurd results can follow the utmost good faith on everyone's part in trying to resolve a particular question or quandary. That's one reason it's really important to have a public review of most issues that come before any regulatory body, including the Commission. It's really easy to get lost in the larger picture, in the scale of all of the issues and questions that have to be addressed, and lose sight of the particular, which I think is what has happened with regard to the Thelma Boltin Center. And I think people lost sight of the really good reasons for truly preserving it. And in the weight of a lot of other issues they have to address, somehow they lost a focus on the fact that, one, the building doesn't belong to them; it belongs to the citizens of this community, and secondly, it's very easy to lose your focus, lose any meaning, any common sense, under the weight of all of the bureaucratic language and double speak that inevitably arises when there are complicated issues and competing interests. As we said before, the city's action is being referred to as, I think, a partial restoration, which is truly doublespeak, because they're going to destroy it. They're going to leave 2 walls standing, but nothing of the interiors, except for, I guess, the gymnasium, the auditorium. If you're dealing with a whole lot of different issues, and this is one on the list, and so, okay, somebody's calling it partial restoration, sounds good. Oh, I'm so sorry, excuse me. And adding insult to injury, in my opinion, is the fact that the money that's going to be expended on destroying it and then replacing it with a completely new building is going to come from money that the community thought was going to go to preservation and conservation, the wild spaces, public places. So I think a great deal has been lost in all of the nomenclature and other issues that the commission has to address. And so this got dusted off without adequate public attention. And I think a bit of a surprise as well for many of us. So the commission has voted. To some extent, they may already feel a little defensive. I'm not sure. But having made the decision, as I've been told, oh, this has already been done, when I asked very particular questions about why, they've just dusted off the fact that the building already has considerable state and national standing and ranking as a building worthy of preservation. They said, well, we made the decision, and that was it, not addressing the real questions. So they're probably a little sensitive, and they need to feel the public pressure, not scorn, but a request and pleading that they reconsider. And they've done this before on even more momentous decisions. So it's an uphill climb, but it's possible. And so we ask for your support and interest in this project. Thank you.
Okay, so we see the state historic marker here. Has anybody seen the marker lately? No, the city's taken it down. It's the Preservation Board for the state voted for this marker. It's a state heritage site. It says that on the marker. And the city has taken the marker down. And when people call and ask, where's the marker? They say they put it away for safety reasons. Well, we have markers all over. Why are they not safe? Why is this one not safe? So it says right on there, it's a state heritage site. And if you're walking by it, now you just think it's a nondescript building, probably run down. Yes, Gwen? It's a contributing building. It's a contributing building in a National Historic District. It's listed as a contributing building to the National Historic Registered District, the Duck Pond, basically. So it's significant nationally and it's significant statewide. And it's on the local register. And that's why they had to go before the Preservation Board so that it could get torn down or saved. And they voted to tear down the wing and keep the auditorium. And the city just took that and ran with it and said, we're going to tear down everything and leave 2 walls of the auditorium. And they say, well, that's what the Preservation Board recommended. And they're experts. That's what they're saying. I mean, look it up. They're saying that they're following the recommendation, but the Preservation Board, I don't think, recommended demolish the entire auditorium. And in reality, I'm going to show you the wing is actually more significant. Okay, let's see if I can do this. So here's a soldier. They hitchhiked here from all over. That's why I think this is even more important than any other nondescript building, because They came from Jacksonville, Orlando, and mostly Camp Blanding, Lake City. I know, big deal, but I mean, all over. They hitchhiked here, and I did call Tampa. I called Orlando and another town, and they did not have anything built in their town for soldiers. And I really doubt that Miami had one. I haven't heard of it if they had one. So I think our building is the only one in the state. And I don't know why Gainesville got it, because you think they would have put it in Stark. But here they are. They come from all over the state. People would give them rides back then. Everybody who saw a soldier in a uniform, you gave them a ride. You weren't worried. And there was only a small parking lot, which we still have to this day, because they didn't need cars. And we do need cars. And it's already kind of small for the 8,000 square foot building. They plan to demolish it and put an 11 to 12,000 square foot building there. It's going to need more parking. But it's not getting a bigger parking lot. Okay, so this, I know it's impossible to read, but this is the first letter that I found. It's at the City Commission of September 12th, 1942. They discuss that. And they say, I know you can't read it, but it says this plan and the elevations are at considerable variance with the original plan submitted with the application. It says, we are trying to get Gainesville to accept the standard type D federal recreation building, but no, Gainesvillians wouldn't stand for that. Gainesville wanted a better building, a bigger building. So I don't know whether the wing was the standard type D or the auditorium was the standard type D, but we didn't want it. And the City Commission pushed back and they said, oh, we've got volunteer architects, Stanford Goen and Mellon Greeley, and they're volunteering to build a bigger, better building than what you're giving us. And we'll hardly use any more building materials, and will harmonize with the surrounding buildings. And the standard type D building didn't harmonize. So even back then, Gainesvillians were interested in culture and beauty and nature. And it says, we request that the Federal Works Agency accept the building as designed by Stanford Goen and Mellon Greeley. The plans for same being attached here to and made part of this resolution in lieu of and instead of the standard type D building. That's what that says. Yeah. What's the year? September. It says September 21, 1942. So somebody's got a birthday around that time, right? You birthday people, speak up. Okay, right, I got you, didn't I? September's a popular time. So they bought the land. The next slide is from James Chestnut. And that's an old family name. Who's heard of the Chestnut Office Supply, Central Florida Office Supply? Raise your hand if you remember. So James Chestnut bought the land, and William Chestnut Jr., who was alive at age 96 or 97, remembers when the Thelma Boltin lot was a vacant lot. And it didn't even have paved roads around it. There was the boulevard. I don't even think the boulevard was paved, but 2nd Avenue wasn't paved, 5th Street wasn't paved. And he remembers that. He still has pretty good memory for a 96 or 7-year-old. So he wrote a letter to the City Commission and said, I remember when it was a vacant lot and we had a lot of fun that building and it's got a lot of history and I don't want it torn down. So this talks about James Chestnut selling the lot. And then they had a resolution, the City Commission. What's interesting about the City Commission minutes is that at the top of every page, it's, for example, this says December 7th. I think, I'm still in September. Here's the deed from James Chestnut. And then this says December 7th, a resolution authorizing the execution of a lease agreement conveying leasehold interest in certain real estate to the United States of America, and directing the proper officials of the city of Gainesville to execute and deliver to the United States of America this lot and this building. So first, we didn't own it. First, the United States owned it. And they are going to start construction in 1942. They do start the construction, and it's all great excitement to the city because this is going to bring people. You can't imagine how many people. There's Thelma Boltin. She got interested. She was involved with it from the get-go. She is right in line with the first program director. She danced with the boys. She talked to all of them. She found them places to stay overnight because this wasn't a hotel. So they had to stay at people's homes, or sometimes they slept on the couch and just slept all over the chairs there. But she is the first staff person there. She comes right in at the beginning. And it says here the total cost is set at, maybe you can read that, $36,991. So it's a $37,000 building. Can you buy a car today for that? Yeah, probably. but certainly not a great big building. And it's probably going to cost $6 million to renovate, but the new big building will cost even more. And this was box office success. 6,000 servicemen entertained by the Gainesville Center during April. I can't even imagine all the soldiers. That building isn't that big. I mean, they didn't come out one night, but they would come hundreds of them every night, all over the place. And Thelma Boltin says it's like home to them. You know, they're in the military barracks. I know a lot of people have military veterans in their background, but I don't know how many people were actually in the military in this room. Not too many, nobody, one, okay. But we do have we do have relatives that are in it, but we can't imagine their life. So when they got to the Thelma Boltin, the Serviceman Center, it was such a relief for them. Thelma Boltin says, we knit, we sew, we run errands, we talk and feed and mother these boys during their recreation hours. And the soldiers got a peace of mind they would have never had staying in the barracks over the weekend. And the new building had a large, spacious auditorium for dancing, ping pong, snooker tables. What's snooker? I really don't know. It's like pool, okay. And then ping pong, a stage for dramatic performances, shower rooms, free shaving equipment, a well-equipped kitchen, a check room, spacious lobby, and 2 pianos, a fiddle, trombone, radio, jukebox, Victrola for classical recordings, public address systems, and dozens of other thoughtful services that only a soldier could really appreciate. An outdoor fireplace enables us to have picnics, and the city is doing a fine job of landscaping this beautiful structure. That fireplace is still there. It's 80 years old, and it's standing right behind the building. If they do build this new, bigger building, it's going to be demolished. It says we have a hookup with radio station RUF, and before long, expect to have a regular program on the air emanating from the service center. Church circles and worthy citizens see to it that the boys have good things to eat, and in general, the center contributes to the general welfare of the soldier in 100 countless ways. And then here's the city manager, J.B. Mobley, or Mobley, I'm not sure because it wasn't around in 1943. And he says that we love the building and we want to let the local people dance here as well. They want to use the auditorium for dancing, and providing there's no objections on the part of everybody else, please allow us to have local citizens dance. Now the girls could dance. You'll see later in the pictures, the girls are sure they're dancing with the men. The government has let a contract for $6,000 worth of furniture, but none of the items could be included, so the city paid for the kitchen equipment, $350. The outdoor fireplace, which is still standing, $175. Microphone plugs, $25. Draperies, you'll see pictures of that, $125. A vacuum cleaner, $50. Sand urns, $50. Shrubbery, $75. And miscellaneous, $150. There's the fireplace, still standing, 80 years old. And that's the back of the Thelma Boltin, which, if that new wing is put on, well, everything's going to be demolished, basically. And in fact, there's community gardens behind that. I don't know if anybody's seen the gardens. Is anyone familiar with the gardens? So all that'll have to be gone during the construction. I don't know if it'll ever come back. But this is the exciting part. Claude Pepper came down. Does anybody remember Senator Pepper? That was a big deal for him to come down and the grand opening. And there was article after article in the Gainesville Sun about the big ribbon cutting grand opening. It says Brigadier General Louis Kunzag, Commanding General of Camp Blanding, will be here. Colonel S.R. Hopkins, Commandant of Military Units at the University of Florida, Don Mayhew, Commanding Officer at the Alachua Army Airfield, Charlie Powell, Assistant Director from the Federal Security Agency's Atlanta office, J.R. Brennan, Regional Engineer of the Federal Works Agency, Sam Harn is the Master of Ceremonies, Mayor Commissioner J.B. Carmichael will accept custody of the building because he's the mayor. Has anybody gone to the Women's Club and seen the Laura Carmichael room? That's his wife. Laura Carmichael, she donated the money to the Women's Club. And also her church and several other garden club as well. So you may have heard of the Carmichaels. Dr. U.S. Gordon, president of the Gainesville Ministerial Association, will deliver the invocation, and city commissioners and service center staffs will be present on the speaker's platform. So this was a huge thing to the city. We loved it. Everybody was all in and wanted to have this building here. And here's the very first picture of it. And it shows the wing. This is why I say the wing is the most significant building. It does not show the auditorium. It's in the background because everybody was coming from the east. So the wing, it's always the wing. You will never see head on a picture of the auditorium. And yet that's what we take every time. We always take pictures of the auditorium. And then here it is. Here's the big picture that is in every publicity shot. The wing is the prominent feature. The auditorium's in the back. So I say, don't demolish the wing, don't demolish the auditorium, keep everything. Because this is how it was built, and the citizens begged for this. The city commission said, we don't want type D building, we want our building with the wing and the auditorium. And here's the back of it. How many postcards do you see that show the back of a building? This is pretty unusual that they love the wing so much. They show the back of it and the auditorium's lingering in the background. So I find this quite interesting. And then you'll see here that this is closed in now, but you see chairs there. So the wing has changed. Oh, what's happening? Oh, okay. That's for the people on Zoom. Apparently people on Zoom can't see my red light. I haven't heard that before, but that's what I'm told. And here's again the wing. No photos could I find of the auditorium or the back of the auditorium or the west wall of the auditorium. None. They thought this was the most important part. And then this is when they're asking for, what are they asking for? A grant based on an estimate of 500 men per day. 500. You know, I live in the Duck Pond neighborhood, and I can't imagine that many young men hanging around. But, you know, yeah, that's because they're in their teens and 20s. Yeah, it was probably quite a noisy situation. Here's 11,000 servicemen visit the center during July. And then I can't see what I'm out of order here because I had to print out what I thought was going to show and I don't see it. Okay, a quiet Thanksgiving. Yeah, that didn't happen. They were they were lined up into the street, wrapping around the building, just like the Friends of the Library book sale. Who goes to the Friends of the Library book sale? You go there, lines, and that's just like that with the Thanksgiving meals. So they said that there was a lot of Northern guys and Staff Sergeant, let's see, some of the Southern cornbread dressing proved especially interesting to many of the Northern boys. They didn't know what Southern cornbread dressing was. They'd had 400 turkey dinners, complete with all the trimmings and choice of 8 kinds of cake. Now that sounds like a party I want to go to. I do love cake. And all day long until late last night. So this would be 11 o'clock at night. In the residential neighborhood too, but it was much smaller back then. The place was full of boys in uniform eating, singing, dancing, and relaxing. They began gathering early yesterday and took a hand in helping the host of local women in helping the center staff and women volunteers prepare the Thanksgiving dinner. The women had a head start of them. Meals were prepared and served in the main auditorium 100 at a time, with the boys' chow line stretching out on the street all the way out. The dinner menu, I hope you're not hungry, turkey, dressing, cranberry sauce, candied sweet potatoes, peas, stuffed celery, olives, 8 kinds of cake, I thought they said 10, ambrosia and coffee. Civic clubs, Kiwanis, Rotary, JCs, and Lions furnished most of it. So the citizens got behind this. This wasn't all military. And then it says, while the food was the #1 topic, boys took turns harmonizing in song. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. From 4 p.m. till 10:30 with Claude Murphy. I think you know the Murphy House. And, well, it's in the Duck Pond to this day. And Mary Parker McGraw taking turns at the piano. Angus Merritt furnished the music. Angus Merritt's house is, I think it's still standing on 16th Avenue, or it used to be. I don't know, is it there? I'm not sure. And then now this is Christmas. They're hosting 6,000 men visited the Gainesville Service Center during Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and the Sunday holiday. So there are food all day long, and 2 staff members helped Miss Boltin and her staff, including various people who you may not know. And 1,000 soldiers registered on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And here we go. What are they doing here? They're dancing. They're dancing their hearts out, meeting local girls, and you know the girls were swooning over those boys. Because girls do like a man in a uniform, I have to say it. And there's the stage that we still have, and the palm trees, I don't know if they're fake or real, might be real, are there. And some local girls are there. There's a girl in the women's club who said her mother, was there and did things with soldiers. I wish she'd come today, but that's why I'm glad to see everybody here, because I don't know if this will ever happen again, although it is going to be recorded. And now this is looking towards the front door. So this is looking towards the stage. This is looking to the front door. And that is WRUF. And this is being beamed through all across the state and probably Georgia. And the music and dancing, and I don't know if this is a holiday, but they're getting to hear it all over. And that's why I think more soldiers came than we expect, because they wanted to get here for the party. They didn't want to have missing out, the fear of missing out. Everybody wanted to come to Gainesville. And here they are having fun with the local girls. Some girls look kind of serious, but I know the boys are loving that. And here they are doing the Grand March, is what it says, in their long dresses. Gosh, women do not wear long dresses now, maybe as a bride, but, and sometimes the bridesmaids, but we do not wear long dresses. So they were very elegant, and they had to behave properly. And here are the guys hanging around talking after the dances or while they're killing time. And here, this is the wing now. This is the wing that faces east, and they have a piano. Remember, they had 2 pianos that they're gathered around singing. No listening with earbuds in. You socialized with people. And here they are. This is in the wing as well. That's the east doors. And now we can see the drapery. So if we do save the building, we know exactly what the drapery should look like if we do a restoration. And these pictures are real helpful. Here they are lining up for Cokes. This is the kitchen now. In 2000, they did a big renovation, so the original kitchen is gone. Here they are waiting for food. And here's Thelma Boltin and someone else cooking. And that kitchen is gone, and so is that stove. But, oh well, that'd be worth a fortune now. She's on the right. Whoops, I'm not good. Okay, she had curly hair, and she was short. She's on the right. So who remembers Thelma Boltin? Several people. And she was short. I'm going to say, not a slim girl, and curly hair. And I think it was red. Does anybody remember with red hair? No? But I think she had red hair. I do remember her with gray hair, but I do think she started out red. And look, local center popular with servicemen. And Hussey, Dr. Hussey, is that a relative of yours? You don't know, right? But this is in 1945 in May. It says, "We must have something," says Thelma Boltin, "because week after week men will fight transportation difficulties to come to Gainesville, to the service center. Soldiers have spent their entire 3-day pass here, and in cases where they couldn't get home, they spent the whole furlough with us instead of trying to see their relatives. Some of them tell us they come to the center for peace and quiet, but hearing the Coca-Cola machine, dishes clattering, 100 voices singing around a piano, one wouldn't think there was any quiet, yet there are soldiers who sleep through it all." Despite describing the features of the center, Ms. Boltin mentioned the writing paper with pictures of Gainesville on the reverse side, which is furnished by the Chamber of Commerce. You're going to see that I have a slide of them writing, and I actually have an 80-year-old piece of paper from the Chamber of Commerce that was given to the soldiers. I have that in my little museum here. And I'm going to show you a picture of it as well. They have cake, sandwiches, and other food, which the snack bar is kept stocked by the Gainesville women. The center furnishes shaving equipment, towels, and the tile showers are a big hit. A list of available apartments and rooms for rent is kept, and some will stay there, several in a room, of course. And she said it's not unusual to see a taxi drive up and 2 women and 4 children pile out when their mother and wives come to visit them. So this was quite the activity center. We placed women with as many as 5 children in local apartments, and they come to us, and we have them on our hands until we find a place for them. She praised the Masons and the Eastern Stars for the magnificent job they were doing with sleeping the soldiers and breakfasting them. And in fact, the Masonic Temple was where a lot of them slept. Yes? No, those black soldiers had their own recreation center, kind of where the Rosa B. Williams building is. Oh, the question was were they integrated in 1940 during World War II? And they kind of weren't. They would serve maybe in the same I'm not a military person, but they were segregated in the military places. So when they did go home, they would go to their own, in the South at least, they would go to their own recreation center. And we did have one. We had one for Black soldiers in Pleasant Street neighborhood. And in the Pleasant Street neighborhood, it's the Rosa B. Williams Center now. That building is new. That building was built in 55. But they did have a place for the Black soldiers. And in fact, when we had the marker ceremony for the unveiling of the state historic marker, the president of the Pleasant Street Historic Society came, and he said, when I came here for recreation and to socialize, we went to the one in Pleasant Street. And he said, but now it's a different story today. And he was there celebrating the marker with the rest of the people. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. And here they are writing. So this is one of the pieces of stationery that I have, and that shows the Chamber of Commerce is trying to promote the tourism. There's the stationery. It says Gainesville, Florida Service Center, and it says compliments of Gainesville Chamber of Commerce. And the other side is information about why you should move here. And it shows the Thomas Center, Thomas Hotel. It shows the university. It shows Glen Springs, which Tom Petty sings about. And then it goes to agriculture because we were really small back then. And the Chamber of Commerce wanted more people to live here. Okay, we got that. So then Servicemen's programs comes to a close because the war ended. And they weren't sure what they were going to do with the building, and the city bought it. Remember, it cost $37,000, $45,000 with the furnishings. They purchased it. I think you can read that with a $12,500 check. So the city owns it, but they used our money, so it's kind of our building. And then Thelma Boltin talks about how the city had foresightness to build the recreation center. I know this is impossible to read, but she says, says Miss Thelma Boltin, the city fathers often get criticized for not being visionary, but this certainly was one time where they were. Ms. Boltin was referring to the Gainesville Recreation Center as the director she is now, looking forward to celebrating the center's anniversary 2 months after the city celebrations its 100th anniversary. Built during World War II with funds supplied by the federal government, the center was originally designed to house, entertain, and have programs for servicemen stationed at Camp Blanding and nearby bases. In fact, one of the bases they came from was, I want to say Mount Verde. Does anybody know where that is? It's 2 miles south of Williston. So if you're from Williston, you might know it because they do have a little airport there to this day. So I'm tying all the dots together, whatever you say. So she was saying how great the city was, how foresighted they were to work with the federal government to get to the wing and the auditorium. And now we're kind of doing the opposite, I think. Here again, now the war is over. These are the local hunks hanging out with their T-shirts and their jeans, and they're still showing the wing. The wing is clearly the most significant part of the building. And here we're looking at the wing. They don't even want to see the auditorium. It's so weird because we know that side much better. But these are the only pictures I could find. It's all about the wing. Now here's Thelma Boltin herself. If you don't remember her, she had a bottle collection, and it says she's showing it. She's showing it at a hobby show in Gainesville, Florida. Guess what? She's in the Thelma Boltin Rec Center. That's the building. See the big window? You can't see the bricks, but she's in the building that's now named after her. And this is another reason it's important to save the building. First of all, it's named after a woman. How many buildings do we have? Rosa B. Williams, Wilhelmina Johnson. How many buildings? We got Josiah Walls and Stephen Mickle, and we can't hardly any women. So she was a powerhouse here at the Thelma Boltin Rec Center. It's named for her. It was named for her in 1991, and then she died in 1992. So she got to see it named for her. But she served the soldiers. She was the director of the recreation program. She created Teen Time, which is where the rock stars played. So she has no kids and relatives that I know of. So this is how we remember her, by naming the building after her. And there she is. She was a founder of the White Springs Folk Festival. Who went to that? Has anyone been to White Springs Folk Festival? That would have 100,000 people attend that over 2 or 3 days. It was a Memorial Day weekend. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her. She graduated from Gainesville High and then from Emerson College in Boston in 1928, where she majored in speech and dramatics. And I have her 1928 diary here. She taught in Polk County at Haines City High School in the Winter Haven area in the 1930s, then moved back to Gainesville and taught English and speech and directed the plays at Gainesville High. She was an actress in many local plays, and she was the founder, director, and actor in the Gainesville Little Theater, which is now known as Gainesville Community Playhouse. Who remembers the old Gainesville Little Theater? Who remembers the old one? The old Women's Club. See, everybody, we're related to everybody. So the Women's Club was that building. They wanted the big new one in 1960. That one got built, and they gave it to the Gainesville Little Theater. And it was there until several years ago when it was torn down and the big new community playhouse was erected. Yeah, and I think many of us have gone there. She was a summer camp counselor, director of social activities in Black Creek, North Carolina, and it made her the perfect candidate for the job of program director of the Serviceman Center. Then after the war, she continued to work in the building, now named the Recreation Center, and she was one of the founders of the White Springs Folk Festival and became its director and the MC of the festival. She was moved to White Springs in 1956, and she was the full-time director. And she also traveled countless of miles, in-state and out-of-state, seeking talent and ways to improve the festival. She had to go find the people making baskets. She had to go find other craftsmen. She had to go find them out in the woods and on the rural areas. And guess what? She didn't know how to drive. So this is a little difficult. She made her way out into the oaky woods with someone else's help. Someone that had a car, and she said the Greyhound men all knew her by name. So she was really throughout the state, people knew who Thelma Boltin was. She had a program called Florida Lore and Song and History, and she presented that to hundreds of school children and civic organizations throughout Florida and Georgia. She became the first lady of the folk festival and was known as Cousin Thelma to the thousands of people who attended the festival from 1955 to 1986. And in 1986, she began sharing her mistress of ceremonies duties with other festival performers. She was actively involved in folklore for over 40 years, and she helped start smaller festivals, such as one in Dade City. When all over, she received awards from music clubs, and she was WGGG Radio Story Hour lady. Does anybody remember WGGG? And she had an hour every week, and people heard her for all over Florida and Georgia. She was famous for her Uncle Remus stories and her stories about old cures and recipes, and she was a scholar about the legends in Gainesville. She is buried at Evergreen Cemetery, another city site. There she is. And here's some of the people at the festival that she recruited. She's giving this Black guy a scholarship and to help him pay to get his ride up to the festival and be a performer. And she created Teen Time. This is the first time I saw Teen Time mentioned. This is in 1957, and it was for the junior high kids, dresses semi-formal. Can you imagine telling teens they're going to wear semi-formal clothes? They don't even want to wear that to church or funerals. Party dresses for girls and suit coats and trousers for the boys. And you had to have a special membership card. And I know one person who does have a membership card. I don't know if anybody else, does anybody have a membership card? No, see, I'm a hoarder. I would still have mine. And here's Thelma Boltin talking to the Friends of the Library meeting at the Hotel Thomas. It talks about being at the Hotel Thomas. She's the program. This is in 1965. And then she dies, and I did attend her funeral. It was at the First Baptist Church. Now we come on to the rock stars who played at the Thelma Boltin Rec Center. Stephen Stills, he went to Gainesville High. Tom Petty, we all know him. Sure didn't look like that later. And then Don Felder. Don Felder is our biggest ally at this point because he's friends with Tom Leadon, and who unfortunately just passed away. He was only 70, but a few months before that, he told me he talked to Don Felder, and Don said that the Thelma Boltin Rec Center is a Gainesville treasure. As a Gainesville treasure was the words he used, and should not be demolished. And I tried to contact him, but they have all their people. You have to talk to their people, and their people talk to him. And so I haven't gotten anything directly from him, but he did tell Tom Leadon that. That's a quote. Here is Don Felder. He's very active on Facebook, and he's talking about his first band in 1959. This was the Continentals. Who remembers the Continentals? You're an old Gainesvillian if you can remember them. But Stephen Stills was in that. Don Felder was in that. Here's Stephen Stills. These are all Hall of Fame people I'm mentioning. And the Eagles, Bernie Leadon and Don Felder. And then later, if you remember Bernie, he looks just like his father. He knew his father because he didn't look like him to me there. And here they are getting their platinum for Hotel California. There's Don. And let's see, where's Bernie? Oh, God, they look so different. I think that's him. I'm not sure. I can't tell. And here's Don Felder. Well, he came back to Gainesville to get an award from the Secretary of State for Florida at the Thomas Center. They had the event at the Thomas Center to discuss the awards. And he didn't mind coming back to Gainesville. Some of them did come. The country singer did come back. He came, and here I am fangirling, getting the autograph. I would have looked up if I realized I was being photographed. And here's Tom. Now, I can't say that Tom played on that stage. Some people say he did. Some say he only watched the bands. And I was told he loved Stephen Stills. Stephen Stills was 5 years older. And when you're a teenager, 5 years is a lot. So he would go and watch Stephen Stills. Here he is playing on Saturday Night Live, November 10th, 1979. The young, slim Tom Petty. And here he is with Mudcrutch, and there's Tom Leadon. Tom Leadon would come for every Tom Petty birthday weekend. So he would come to Tom Petty Park, and we'd all get to talk to him. He was the friendliest person, the greatest guy ever. And I don't know what happened exactly, but he was in Mudcrutch with Tom Petty, the two Toms. And here's Tom at the halftime show. Here's the Thelma Boltin. I wish I knew when this picture was taken. I took it, but I have so many pictures of it, I don't have the date. And you see the sign is there. So obviously it was quite a while ago. And I'm taking pictures of the auditorium, not the wing. But I do have pictures of the wing. I couldn't find them. And here's shuffleboard courts. These are 80 years old as well. These are 80. And then the community gardens are off to the left. That's another picture of the shuffleboard court. And I'm pretty sure the new 12,000 square foot building will, do something. That won't be able to stay around. Okay, I wanted to show you this. This is overhead. Here's the Thelma Boltin. Here's the wing. And this points right down to the Sweetwater Greenway, which we will tie in with the Matheson with that, because they'll just walk across University Avenue here, come up, and if we keep the wing, people can walk in, see the little museum with I have all the World War II artifacts and Thelma Boltin artifacts, come into the museum, and then continue on through the Duck Pond neighborhood, or go back to the Thelma Boltin, to the Matheson if they want to. You see it's encircled by residential area. So usually when they put big buildings, 12,000 square foot buildings up, they don't have them in a residential area. They have them out by the senior center, out by Walmart, if you're familiar with that, with a lot of parking, although I don't think there's enough parking there. And this is all the parking. And that's going to be, and I was told, oh, well, they can go up the hill. This is a hill all the way over here, walk in a park, and then go walking back out. This is a hill. So if you're wearing high heels, it's not a pleasant experience, and go in this way. Or have a walker or a cane. I imagine some handicapped parking places will be here. And what? Kirby Smith is down here. This is the building, and this is the parking lot. But it's not, so it looks kind of close, but it isn't. You have to, and you're not supposed to, where? Oh, right over here, it says do not park? Right, right. And I think some of the lawyers down here lease them. So I think some of them is already parking for other people. And here's Regents Park, the condos. And an interesting story is a person who lives in Regents Park now, his uncles both went to the Thelma Boltin Serviceman Center when it was there and socialized and had a great time. And I know at least one of them did not come back from Europe. I'm not sure, but so here he is, and now he lives in Regents Park, and this is the building where he can walk the same floor that his uncles walked. He might be listening now. He's in North Carolina. We have how many people on Zoom right now? 10 people on Zoom. I know people from Knoxville, Tennessee were trying to Zoom in. I had a person from Maine, 2 people in North Carolina, Massachusetts, New York City, and other places in Florida that are Zooming in. Okay, so let's see what is next. I know I'm in charge of that. Here we go. So it's Northeast Residential, Gainesville Residential District. It's called a residential district. We have two institutional buildings, the Thelma Boltin and the Thomas Center. And I think you realize the Thomas Center was almost lost as well. They planned to demolish it in the 70s. It was as a home, it was started in like 1906, 1909. But what we see today was really the hotel, which was built in 28. So they were trying to tear down a building in the 70s that was only 50 years old. But the Women's Club, Historic Gainesville, and other people got together and said, you're not tearing down that building. So they saved it and the city bought it for, I want to say, a little over $300,000. Well, it needed work, as does the Thelma Boltin. But this is interesting. Whoever wrote this in Wikipedia, they just talk about it being, it says it's known mostly as the duck pond now. And this is the whole blurb. And then it talks about history, and it talks about the Thelma Boltin being torn down in this paragraph. And it's kind of funny because this was updated in 2023, and notable residents, it says Tom Petty's a resident. So yeah, they don't quite know what they're talking about. And Tom Petty Park is next to our neighborhood. And then here references, and then number 3 is building to be torn down. Serviceman Center to be torn down. That's one of the references talking about the Northeast Residential District. We did get an award recently. I'm calling it an award. I'm not saying it's quite an award, but it's in the 11 that are most endangered buildings in the state of Florida. There was, I want to say, around 40 nominated, and we got picked. And this is supposed to end up, and yeah, we got picked, and we're going to get an ambassador from the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation who will help us try to preserve the building. I mean, I don't think they'll give us money, but they're supposed to talk to us and say, did you think of that? Did you think of that? And so we got this award, and hopefully they're sending publicity to the media. They said they would. And I haven't seen anything published, so I don't know what they're doing, if they've got it out. Now they say, oh, the Thelma Boltin's in bad shape. The roof is sagging, and it's cracking. The bricks are cracking. This building's in bad shape, right? This building's in bad shape. This is the building, and now look at it. So you can save a building. You can save a building. This is a very complicated building to save, and somebody wanted to do it, and they did. You could never tell it was in that kind of condition. Here's another one. This is in Detroit, and this had a beautiful tower here. This is in bad shape. The Thelma Boltin Rec Center is not in shape like this, and this is what it looks like now. So I'm just saying, you can restore buildings. All it takes is money. and the city commission does have the money. It's our taxpayer dollars, wild spaces, public places. It's not coming out of their budget. They have the money. They could have spent $5.4 million restoring the Thelma Boltin Rec Center, or they could spend $5.6 million on a new building, and they chose to do the new building. Everyone unanimously. And what? Or they could spend the $450,000, that was an option, to stabilize it. And they kept saying, oh, it's a Band-Aid, it's a Band-Aid. Did you, Robert, did you watch the city commission? Did you watch it? And they kept saying, oh, we don't want to just spend $450, that's just a Band-Aid, and we'll have to keep maintaining it. Well, guess what? There's people that are going to donate, and they'll have the money. They could get a $500,000 grant. This is a well-qualified building. Let's see. And so now I think it can be a National Historic Landmark. I know you can't read that, but this talks about, I do have it here somewhere. Anyhow, it's just got to be a significant building showing us different ways of life. It doesn't have to be grand architecture, and it's beyond the National Register. It's a National Historic Landmark building. And guess what? In Alachua County is on a National Historic Landmark. Only 2, they're farmhouses in the county. The Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, I get that, she's famous, and Dudley Farm. Those are our 2 National Historic Landmarks. This would be the first one, if we do the Thelma Boltin, in East Gainesville. A feather in the cap for East Gainesville, and it has all kinds of reasons to be considered a landmark, from the World War II to Thelma Boltin to the rock stars. We have 3 great reasons to save our building. And I think that's the last one. Whoops. Nope. Wait a minute. I'm doing it backwards. Oh, God. Did this die? Okay. All right. Well, I think that's the end. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I'm glad you were here. question and answers,
Yeah.
and then we'll figure out how we
Let
can.
me
set
add a
up the
couple of
team.
things. Melanie asked me if I watched the video today, and I did. For those of you that want a deep dive, it's April 27th, the General Policy Committee meeting of the City Commission. You can access it easily at cityofgainesville.org. There's a block that says agendas and minutes and videos, and there's a calendar that comes up, and you scroll back to April, you find the City Commission's meeting on that day, and you can watch it. It's a couple of hours, but it shows the staff's presentation, the 4 options. It shows the comments made by the staff, by the commissioners, why they voted the way they voted, and it was 6-0 for the partial restoration. Melanie spoke there, I did as well, Bessie did. One of the things that I'm just going to give you my personal, observation. One thing that seemed to stop them from a complete restoration was the potential price tag of it going up from 5.6 million to 6.2 million or even more, which the contractor who submitted that estimate, who is a restoration expert, gave them. Point I made, and in City Commission, you only get 3 minutes, right? Well, one of the points I made is that Mark Barrow, he and his wife have restored and many older homes in the Southeast Historic District and in Gainesville. He told me that almost routinely it was about the cost of restoration was about 2/3 what it would be for a complete rebuild. All right, that's just anecdotal, but that's his experience. The other thing I mentioned was that I was rather skeptical of the estimates, for this or for that. And one of the points that the restoration contractor had made was that you don't know how much it's going to be until you get into it, starts tearing down walls and stuff like that. Well, I believe it could be done for less, but they frankly got skittish and a little bit afraid of that, going over 6 million to do it. And so I encourage you to look at that. Harvey Ward did say, to his credit, that no matter what it is, it's still going to be named the Thelma Boltin Center. They're still going to do everything they can to honor her memory. But a historic landmark is a historic landmark. There's a principle behind that. If you want to help, I think the best thing is to go view that. Look and see how your commissioner voted, how they thought, why they voted the way they did, and then contact them directly. Now, the next thing we're going to do is have folks, as she says, who want to give their own remembrances of being at the center. And since we only have one microphone, you got to come up. And then after that question and answer session, same thing. She's either got to repeat the question if you're back there, or you need to come forward and we'll continue the discussion.
This is the time for your reminiscences. If you want to remember Thelma Boltin herself, or you want to remember going to teen time. Teen time ended in the late 60s. So yeah, if you were a teenager in the 60s, then there's not too many of you in the room, I don't think. But I do want to hear your reminiscences. And any stories you remember about the Thelma Boltin. If you have any souvenirs, like I have some things here, I didn't necessarily get them from the building. In fact, I have this. This is so funny. Thelma Boltin Activity Center, and they spelled Bolton wrong. Senior recreation at its best. I do have an article about Hotel Thomas, historical landmark or white elephant. And this is the date is April 14th, 1974. So we almost lost that. And now it's a centerpiece of the Duck Pond neighborhood. And we have the city commission. Last one was out in the yard, and the Christmas lights are there, the lighting of the trees there, and now the city's very proud of it. So nobody has reminiscences. Okay, go ahead. One or two. Okay, come up, Joe.
Hi, Joe Quarter. I came here in 1975, and I have a number of memories within the building. We had built up something called the Hogtown Granary. It was a food co-op, and we did a number of square dances there. There was concerts. The one event that stands out to me just symbolically was Peter Matheson, the author, came and did a book reading and book signing at the Bolton Center. And the thing about it, it's kind of aside from the building, is just the circumstance of it. The building was full. I mean, people were standing room only. And Tom Ryder from Goering's Books, he had the book display over by the side, to sell all the books. And Peter Matheson, when he was somebody asked about one of his older books, and Peter just said, "Well, yeah, you can get those books on Amazon. Just look up online, you can get them." And I looked over at Tom Ryder, and he just gave me this withering look, that this is the end. But yeah, but it was just the look on. Yes, but the biggest event I was involved with there was we did a healthcare speak out. In 2000, we put on the ballot a ballot initiative for a non-binding referendum about single-payer healthcare. And we did a speak out there, used the building, had a large turnout of people. And we only had 2 or 3 planned speakers to get up and talk about their own personal testimonials. And it was just, the event was a real success. We videotaped it. Somebody sent the videotape to Michael Moore. And when Michael Moore made his movie about healthcare in America, Alachua County Labor Coalition actually shows up in the credits, but that was in that building, just having that space. So community spaces are really important, and restoration is something that can happen. I was also in some punk rock shows in this building with smoke machines and loud noise and everything. So things can change. And so we got to keep alive what we got.
So then after we do our reminiscences, we're going to start brainstorming and saying, how can we save it? Main thing is write to the city commissioners. If you know them, talk to them. And go ahead, we'll let you start.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rosemary Ramsey. I'm from Alachua County. I haven't lived here very long, but when I first moved here about 6 or 7 years ago, my partner and I, who went to the University of Florida, would go to dances in Thelma Boltin Center. And it was absolutely wonderful because it was a big hall, and then you could go downstairs and, if you were exhausted, just sit in the sofa. We had lunches there sometimes because we would have weekends there, and we would have lunches and sometimes even dinners. And they waxed the floor several times since we've been there. And yeah, so it really was a lot of fun. And my heart is there because that's where I first learned how to contra dance, and I would hate to see it come down. And I've been contra dancing ever since. Thank you.
And actually, contra dance people would come from all over the world to the Thelma Boltin Rec Center. The Winnebagos were everywhere. When they had it twice a year, they would have huge dances. So that building is known throughout, well, certainly the nation.
In the 1950s, I worked in the fashion industry in New York City, and there was a woman, a Mrs. McCormick. That was my maiden name. Mrs. McCormick lived on 9th Street, and she would come to our fashion house to buy all the clothes for the mothers of the bride and the honeymoon clothes and the such. And she sent me some pictures, and I looked for them because the wedding reception was at the Thelma Boltin Center. And I just can't find those pictures, but I do have a picture. Years later, I ran for city commission in one, and I was inaugurated or condemned or whatever you call it at the Thelma Boltin Center. So I thought, how strange, from the fashion industry of New York to being a citizen in little old Gainesville. I think it would make a wonderful World War II museum. I mean, we're losing World War II, and most of us I've lost all my brothers that were in that war. And I think that this community really should gather around and see if we can save that as a World War II museum.
I'm so proud of my uncle and my uncles and my father, and I'm lucky I have this because they get distributed among the siblings. One sibling gets it, then their kids get it, and then they don't want it. You go to antique stores and you see all the times people's family members. But if there was a World War II museum, you could say these are Melanie Barr's relatives, and people would say, "Oh, I know her. Oh, she looks just like him, except I'm really his daughter." We certainly would have, I want to have in the wing some kind of museum, just like the Thomas Center has a museum in the front of their building. It's not exactly a museum, it's a wall exhibit like this. And in front of the Thomas Center, we could have that in the Thelma Boltin in the wing. And the people coming up the Greenway, when they're bicycling around and they want a drink of water, they can go inside and look at the museum and go to the bathroom or get a drink of water and then continue on their way. But I know the city doesn't have any money for staff. In fact, the new big building will require 2 staff people. And yet I've read articles, they're in a hiring freeze. So they're going to build this giant building and then just have the air conditioning running and no one to work in there. So I don't know what they're thinking. I mean, we don't, who wants it? Just Parks and Recreation? I don't know of any citizen that says, oh, we want a new big building. No one. And then, for example, Desmond wants to have a new cultural arts center in East Gainesville. So the teenagers and young people have somewhere to go and do art and learn, get more educated and cultured and have activities. And then I know Cynthia is trying to get the sports complex on Waldo Road. Well, they can have those sports complex. They can have a cultural arts center. Let us have our Thelma Boltin. Let's go back to dancing. Let's go back to Zumba. Let's go back to having weddings there. And that's a lot of fun. I would love to see what the Thelma Boltin looked like during the weddings. Do you have pictures of the weddings there? No? And I remember Mrs. McCormick. I remember her too. She was a senior citizen. She lived on 8th Street and 4th Avenue. 9th, she lived near 9th, but I think it was 8th. Well, anyhow, and there was another McCormick house on 7th Street. There was one on 7th in that area. We're right there in the vicinity. Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Wow. Wow. So Jean is saying, for the Zooming people, if you're still on, Jean is saying that when she rang the doorbell at Mrs. McCormick's house and she said, did you bring my order from New York? And Jean says, no, I brought myself from New York. And now Jean's lived here how many years? Since 1958. I'm not good at math either, so I can't. It's in the 60 something years. Okay. So anybody else have anything to say? Nothing? Well, let's start brainstorming. Karen, do you have something? Because we've got to think of a way we can convince them. They can rescind their vote. They rescinded their vote to put quadruplexes in single family housing. They rescinded the vote to cut down the Harry's tree. They rescinded their vote to double their salaries. Why can't they rescind their vote to tear down the Thelma Boltin? Why not? Yeah.
I don't know the name of it, but I think there was a panel that talked about racial equality there. It was some years ago. Patricia Hilliard-Nunn was there, and some other notable people from our community talked. Do any of you remember that? It was maybe part of what? No, it wasn't that. It was before Gainesville for All. If anyone remembers, there was a panel of some sort, and Patricia Hilliard-Nunn was there, and the woman who teaches Black history at the University of Florida, she's retired. I forget her name. No, but there's another. She thinks she taught religion. She's very well known, and no, another. I'm sorry, but I remember. I'm almost sure it was there in the Thelma Boltin Center, but I don't know if anyone remembers anything. I hope I'm not, going crazy. But I just thought it was in the Thelma Boltin. Okay, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I got it mixed up.
Dottie, do you want to come up? Believe it or not, her nephew was selling them. Yep. So that's why the question is, how did I get Thelma Boltin's diary? Her nephew, that's how I got the record, because we called her cousin Thelma, but it says Aunt Thelma, something about, hope you enjoy my record, Aunt Thelma. And somebody spotted that right away, and they said, isn't she cousin Thelma? I said, no, it was her nephew selling the record. See? So some people don't appreciate history, and it looks like a lot of them are in city commission. Unfortunately, but we have to think of how we can save it. I've thought of having the Friends of Thelma Boltin Rec Center, which will just be email friends now, and hopefully support it financially if it gets saved. And then we'll do fundraising for it. We'll have a dance like the Thomas Center Associates does, but ours will honor veterans. We'll have World War II music. We'll have 1970s Vietnam era music. Music for everybody, every veteran, and we'll honor them. We'll put our fathers and uncles' pictures out. We're only going to do that if they save the building. Okay, anybody else want to talk? No. Okay, Matthew, go ahead.
So right now we're passing out our flyers. This is my flyer of talking points. You've heard all the talking points before for talking to the city commissioners and talking to a lot of citizens who are not necessarily as inclined to save a historic building because it's historic, but maybe inclined based on logistical considerations. So I'm suggesting, first of all, we email all the commissioners. They have one address that'll reach them all. We email the manager, Wild Spaces Public Places Director Betsy Waite, and the Parks Director Roxanne Gonzalez. I don't know exactly who makes the decisions there. I feel like maybe about 4 or 5 of the city commissioners really just seem to be kind of following the lead of the staff and the mayor. And but I think it is still important to email all of them and to email the staff. As far as financial, the repair and reopen option, that was the option to safely reopen the building, basically to replace the roof, the decking, to stabilize the structure, replace some trusses, and repair the AEC. That's $450,000. Now, the complete, what they approved is what they call the partial restoration, which is to demolish everything but 2 walls. That was $5.6 million. So there's a pretty big cost difference. We don't normally demolish a building because it needs a new roof, because someday in the near future it's going to need a new AC. We replace those routinely in buildings. And as far as other costs for ongoing maintenance and for other things that don't need to be done right now to open it safely, but need to be done down the road, we get historic preservation grants if we have a historic building. But if we tear it down and build a new building or the partial restoration, we lose out on those grants, and all the cost will have to be paid for out of the Wild Spaces Public Places money. The other argument I've heard for tearing down and rebuilding the building or the partial restoration is, again, the maintenance issue. And maintenance long-term will be needed either way. The moment we put a roof on a building, especially if an asphalt shingle roof, you get around 20 years if you're lucky out of those. And that's the case the day you put it on, even if they do tear down the building and rebuild it. And if cost overruns occur, we're much better off starting out at $450,000 to get it open now, and then going from there than we are at $5.6 million. I haven't seen very many projects yet that don't have some sort of cost overrun of construction. If you've built a house or done a major addition on a house, you've known that time delays and shortages of materials, shortages of labor, they occur. And inflation, yes, right now especially. Financial, the city is facing tight budgets in future years. They've been borrowing a huge amount of money from GRU and running up debt there. They can't keep doing that, and that's true even if the state's plan doesn't occur, even if the city keeps GRU. So they're going to be facing the financial crunch either way. Now, there's been some talk off and on about whether or not we're entering a recession or not. If we do enter a recession, we will someday. That would reduce sales tax revenue, and unfortunately, that would reduce Wild Spaces Public Places revenue. We get a lot of that revenue from visitors coming here. That's one reason why they did it as a sales tax. They may need to spend Wild Spaces Public Places money on other parks-related expenses that they've been funding out of general revenue that could be funded either way. And that's why the best way to get it open is to basically repair the roof and get it reopened. Once we have it open, once we have the community using again, I think it's a lot less likely for it to get torn down. And I don't think we would be in the situation. I think it would still be a safe building as a historic building had we not had COVID and had everything not been shut down for 2 years. As other buildings Once they've been reopened to the public, it's a lot harder for the city to say, hey, we're going to go tear it down. Now, the logistics will be back in service much faster with repair and reopen than the demolition and reconstruction that they call partial restoration. The other question is, would the Thelma Boltin Center even be rebuilt if they do this partial restoration? Especially with looming budget problems and supply chain problems. And, yeah. Well, will the two walls stand, or will they leave the two walls for a few years and then say, whoops, we got to tear those down too? The one example where this happened was the house at Coffin Nature Park. Coffin Nature Park opened in 2005, and the plan at the time was that the house would be opened as basically a nature operation center and essentially almost like a museum, nature educational center for children. And that didn't happen. They said it's not safe yet, or we need to do this or that. Well, 10 years later, they decided to demolish the building instead. And I don't remember a whole lot of community discussion. We drove by one day and saw it being demolished. Now, the argument they gave was that it didn't meet current code. Well, building codes change every 3 years, and buildings operate under the code when they're built under. Otherwise, every building would have to be rebuilt every 3 years. So that argument's a bit of a red herring. If they if they put a new roof on, okay, the new roof meets the new code. If they put a new AC and the new AC meets the new code, but we don't go demolish the whole building. So, so again, Copper Nature Park's been 8 years since it was torn down in 2015 when they're supposedly going to rebuild it, and that hadn't happened. All right, so thank you very much, and please email the city commission and the other staff members having the sheet.
We have a few more people. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Joe Beatty, and this was supposed to be brainstorming. So my ideas are some brainstorming, and I've been active with Paula for 15 years, trying to get changes at City Hall with the biomass, and now with governance. So I know it's great to send emails. A lot of them don't get read, or they get discounted. You can't see them. I think everybody should write emails, but here are a couple of other ideas, because I think we have to think out of the box and maybe even think out of Gainesville. First of all, they're using Wild Spaces Public Places money. There's a Wild Spaces Public Places Oversight Board, and there's a meeting, Tamara, the next one is in September. I think you ought to start contacting that Oversight Board. As I understand that the current one is asking good questions, and I've got questions about how that money is being used, for this and for tearing it down. So I think you need to attack from all different sides. I was doing a little bit of research this morning. I noticed that there's a heritage pecan tree that's going to come down. That's what it said in the Gainesville Sun, and we've got all these people who want to save trees and heritage trees and that. So I think we have to look at the different areas, veterans, the environmentalists, and you have to look to all those people for help. And I think you have to look outside of Gainesville. I also noticed that the historic marker, somebody from Colorado, I think, posted it on a website where they log the locations of historic markers. The interest in historic preservation extends beyond here, and we need people from outside. If we can mobilize some of those. One thing this commission doesn't seem to like is publicity, and the publicity from, we're not getting it here locally. It's very difficult. The Alachua Chronicle and Main Street Daily News probably cover it the best. And then some things like Joe's publication, The Iguana. And but you really need to get outside of Gainesville and raise fuss. And I think there's enough going on, and there's certainly enough different interest areas. Veterans, I think maybe you can mobilize. So I just encourage all of you to start thinking beyond just writing to the commissioners and putting pressure. That's good, but you have to start doing more. So yeah, and that if you write CityCom at GainesvilleFL.gov. It should go to all of them. And come to meetings, speak out. You know, you don't have to go all the time like some of us have, but show up. When different faces show up, they're always wondering, and it makes a difference. And even if you don't speak, it makes a difference. And if you are up to speaking, do it. Tamara's got something. Yeah. Yeah. Let me just tell them. In case you couldn't hear what Tamara's saying, it is really important. You get 3 minutes to speak on things that aren't on the agenda at 1 o'clock, or you can come for early public comment at, I don't remember, it's like 10:30 or 11. I think it's 10:30 at the city. Check the city and the county, both have open public comment. And as Tamara just said, this is probably not going to be on the agenda, which kind of ties your hands in speaking. But if you can go for those times, more people will hear you. You know, people will not, the public, because in part, you know, when you're talking to the commissioners, people get educated too that are watching or listening later, and the press sometimes picks it up. So it's really important. The other thing is that a lot of times, if you can spend some time at one of the meetings, the whole meeting, and sit there are other things going on, and they're talking about the budget, and you go, oh, budget, yeah, let's bring, there are relevant other issues that are happening that you can talk on those issues too. You can speak to the motion that's happening, and sometimes you can bring in a subject that's not on the agenda per se, but if they're talking about the budget, you can say, why are you spending this, money you're on the partial restoration and not the full? There are ways you can do it. I'm happy if anybody ever wants to talk, get some ideas I've learned from 15 years sitting in there. I'd be happy to talk to you and think outside the box.
Diane, did you have a question?
To the neglect and then the building interior.
A lot of people think that way because it's
State for the COVID.
closed it, right?
There were people that were
Big supporter here.
Within the organization, within government, within the institution, they will take responsibility.
Right.
No. And
Right.
not.
Yeah, I'm really sorry, ma'am. We have an online audience. Please come up to the mic and repeat your comments so that everybody can hear it,
Let's just say,
and there'll be a record.
okay, do you want to come up or you want me to restate it? You're saying that the city allowed it to be neglected. And I know several people agree, the lack of maintenance. In fact, they're still letting vines grow up on the outside of the building. They do not cut the vines. Other people have to cut them.
It's
And
just
look at
a point of taking responsibility for keeping buildings that belong to the government in good condition. And that is the case of this building. This building was being used up until the days before COVID happened. People in the government were receiving their salaries during COVID. They still had responsibilities. They could have worn a mask, gone, inspected the building. They could have been things done to protect that building during COVID. It's not that COVID created the destruction of the building. It was neglect. And so the millions of dollars that they're willing to spend to tear something down and build something else is wasted because of neglect. And people need to be responsible. I mean, we're in everyday life, all of us have to be responsible for things. And so people who are elected, people who have salaries paid by the government need to be responsible too. We can't just say, oh, governments are always like that. They're not supposed to be like that. They have to be responsible. And so we're in this situation now because of neglect. And so we need to stand up and see how we can put the pressure on from that perspective.
Okay, then you had something. Would you want to come up? Okay.
Two-part. For the $450,000 estimated, do they think they have most of that money available now? Because it's okay. So it seems to me it's kind of silly to say you're going to spend a lot of money that you may not have now, where you could spend this money now. One thing that I think I love to, reenactments and things like that. Maybe get the word out and have like a writing campaign when Thelma Boltin Center is open again. What will your organization or your group use it for? And I can think of a lot of creative things, to both honor Thelma Boltin and to honor the servicemen, and that might involve, the local high schools, different groups. But I think getting that going, that how would you replay history? What kind of events would you have at the center, and get that in writing somehow to show that once this is open, this is going to be a very well-used center, because I love history, and I think it needs to be passed down to other generations. And by actually recreating events or doing things at the actual place, I think is really important. So just an idea.
Great. Well, I hope everybody signed the list, because we'll send it around. And guess what? We're getting a website. Somebody's already designing it. So we'll have information about why it's significant, and we'll have a contact us page, and we can go on there and suggest photos, suggest text. So, and we can make links to Facebook pages if you want. She has a Facebook page for preservationists. And so we need to brainstorm and get it in writing. Please sign the email list. And that's something we want to get up on our website, which is being designed. I hope they were here today. I don't see them. Maybe they zoomed in. And what's funny, someone who was zooming in already talked about the presentation and thought it was great. Okay.
When they hold events post Thelma Boltin being open and restored.
Where's it go? Where would the money go? Okay, the question is, where would the money go post-COVID? You mean, okay, yeah, come up.
Okay, once the Thelma Boltin Center is restored and there's different venues at the center, where would those profits go? Who benefits from the money?
It pays their salaries.
Oh, okay, so that's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, that's all I have.
And then someone else was raising their hand. Somebody? Okay, Tamara. Yeah, the city's taken it down and it's in storage. Yeah. Yes. Sure, markers are $2,000 now. Or more. I think they're over 2,000. And they said for safety, so I'm getting the idea that when they do construction or demolition, it wouldn't be safe. You know what? They could put it in the parking lot now. There's green space in that parking lot. Okay, the comment is, where's the marker and can't they put it somewhere else? And so I'm saying that little parking lot has green space in it. We could put the marker there so it'll be safe there. So that's another question we can ask the city commissioners. And I like Joe's idea. It has to be different people getting up there and saying, please save the Thelma Boltin Rec Center, because it can't just be me. It can't just be Robert or Bob, whatever. It has to be several more people where it's not just me. And then they'll say, well, we are getting a lot of feedback saying we should save the building. That's how they saved the Harry's tree. They said 1,000 emails saved the Harry's tree. And you know what I'm talking about, the tree they were going to cut down. They changed their minds. They suddenly found money. They had money. It was always there. And they suddenly found it. And they have money to restore the Thelma Boltin because they have the 5.6 million to do a new building. They can do the building for 450,000 and stabilize it and get it back open. And then apply for another $500,000 grant, which the state will give them. So we do have to brainstorm. We have to think, how do we go from here? They voted to demolish. The people in wild spaces, public places are right now, when they go to work on Monday, they're drawing plans for this giant building with no parking. And then if they said, oh, they can park at the school board. School board's not letting them park for free, and they're not going to let them park during the week. And it's a liability. Then they'll have to pay, to their insurance to pay their insurance in case someone trips and falls in that parking lot. That's going to the Thelma Boltin Center and not to the school board. So that's another expense they don't have now. And then if they hire the 2 new workers, where's that salary coming from? It's supposed to be a cutback in workers, not adding to. So is it going to just be a giant building, air conditioned, running, and no one in there? We have a lot of questions, and we do need more people to talk.
I think it's time to wrap it up. And if you have comments and suggestions, we will conclude the recorded session now. I will tell you that sometime Monday, it will go up on the Matheson's YouTube site, and you can copy that link and send it to your friends, and invite anyone to come back to the Matheson to our programs in the fall. Sign up with Willett in the back to be a member of the museum. And thank you, Paula, Betsy, and Melanie, for a great program.
Sure.